Hello, everyone. I'm LeiLani Cauthen, CEO and publisher at Learning Counsel News Media and Research, and also a proud EduJedi. So this is an EduJedi activity event. So let's launch into this whole conversation. We really want to focus in on these experience standards and the focus in on being autonomous. So that's a new thing for students. So initially, these standards start with they're not digital literacy. Like that's sort of been a mode now for quite a few years. It's maybe new to some of you. I don't think all of you, to focus in on digital literacy. That's been like the thing. Like, let's make sure you don't go to weird websites and put in your data for kids. But this one, this last sentence on this slide I'm showing you is focusing on your student responsibilities with regards to the user interface and their user experience with digital content. So it's kind of a cut above or maybe, under what's happening with digital literacy. So I want to go over to the actual standards document, which we're in edit on now, and show you that. Wendy, can you tell me, are you guys seeing this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. So the first standard is you're taking responsibility for being in the correct level in the courseware app, the right site or knowledge object, check sheet or course sheet, to ensure their own learning is not inhibited or by being too advanced or too basic. So this is kind of a high level concept. It's one of 20. I don't think we'll get to all of them today. The second one is takes responsibility for doing an adequate amount of practice. Third one is request additional materials or levels or subjects if not sufficiently challenged. I'm going to stop right there and let's do a round of discussion about these concepts, these first three, which are basically that the student has an awareness of where they're at with wherever you put them, which is really essential because especially if you're going to include kindergartners, like James, you're doing now, this gets really fishy if they're like logged into the wrong thing and spending 3 hours in that and not somewhere else. Okay, so James, because I just called your name, I'm going to have you go first.
So in terms of going first and commenting on the first, because I'm seeing number 2, taking responsibility.
Yeah, all three of these. I'm sorry, they're not all on the one page. So correct level, right? The first one, adequate amount of practice.
Since you mentioned kindergartners, we got a lot of strange looks when people said, you want to do kindergartners online? Well, if we're responsible as a public entity to educate students, all means all. So we need to figure out a way in order to educate the students. So how do you do that? Well, going to that point about being autonomous, yes, there are kindergartners who have help at home logging into what they're supposed to log into, but at the end of the day, that kindergartner, the expectations, they'll be expected to do some work that their teacher provides to them on their own. And actually, surprise, surprise, we're finding as time goes on, kids are adapting. They're starting to, even the younger kids, the really young kids, the kindergartners are starting to adapt to, okay, this is how I'm supposed to log on. This is different from what I thought school was going to be, but okay, I get it now. So our job, it's incumbent upon us to, I always like to say, make that technology invisible. So nobody's thinking about or worried about what button to push. And then that way, the road to autonomy for that student, you just cleared some boulders out of the way.
Good comment. Okay, great. All right, I'm coming to Jim. Fazzino, you've been doing online learning for a while. What are your comments on maybe this first clump of these standards here?
So I agree with everything that I just heard, because you want to have students, part of our responsibility, at least in my personal opinion, I would say that it's probably shared among educators, is we need to build the capacity for students to build executive functioning skills. They need to build their own agency, right? And so having an awareness, maintaining discipline, these types of things are, they're learned skills and they take time. Kind of just going through my head right now, our second graders are coming back to school this school year, and the school building is foreign to them because their lived experience is the virtual, right? Our third graders
Mhm.
are in a spot where they are kind of on the line. I remember what it was like in kindergarten for part of first grade, but the rest of first grade and second grade, I was home, and they are, and that's, you know, you're looking at going from early elementary to elementary ages right there. And so having an awareness and taking ownership and agency for where you are as a learner embraces a few things. One, it normalizes our class, our students being in different places, right? So we can stop looking at who is ahead and looking at that as a rank order of 1, 2, 3, or 4, and actually who's in their head, having that metacognition, that awareness of what they're thinking, needing, and doing. And of course, that builds that capacity for children to advocate for themselves in an appropriate way, right? So my own experience, I always go to my own 2 children. I have 6th graders now this year. They went to middle school, which if you are a parent of a middle schooler or you've had this experience, my heart goes out to you. But I watch them in 4th and 5th grade. Dad runs a virtual learning school program for middle and high school students, and we've serviced tens of thousands of children. And watching my own children struggle and learn was tough for me. But that routine and that, for lack of a better word, ownership that mom and dad had to put on them, because we too had to work during this time, has built such great capacity. Now they're telling their middle school teachers when they're not using the LMS appropriately, how they should be posting homework and what works for their learning preferences. Those were different conferences we had the other day. But that being said, giving children the opportunity to do this, I do believe that's building the skill for lifelong learning, that then they will be empowered moving forward to be more effective at school.
Wow, so interesting. So interesting that you've observed all that. Well, awesome. Well, I'm going to ask Zach to get ready to show us what the commercial side is doing on these points number 2 and 3, because I think it's going to be illustrative for everyone. But while you're getting ready, and Doug can give you the screen on that, I'm going to go next back to Dr. Waymack. Your comments, Matt.
Yeah, I got some several points I've kind of written down in no particular order. First, Jim, I can relate to you. I have 5 children, and they run a gambit, and you know, I'm an insider for lack of a better term to call it, and it's fascinating. Even us here on this panel, if you have your own personal children, anyone's listening to the webinar, what you think is universal human knowledge and what they should be able to do and know is not. And that's even my wife. I mean, I'm married 20 years. I'm thinking, well, I mean, Rebecca, this isn't hard. And just watching my wife and our oldest son the first time he did any kind of online thing was very interesting. It was very interesting to watch. You know, some of the standards that LeiLani had put up, really speak to me. I really like the concept of the, you know, students be able to take responsibility, and really part of that is, you know, it's not just, it wasn't called out on these first set of standards, but it's like, you know, it says the, you know, standards for students, but it's really, you know, it's parent education as well, being able to work with them, like especially when you're looking at like that K3 band. I mean, you obviously the parent has got to be lockstep with the child. Another one that kind of spoke to me was in thinking of my one child, personal child that's not particularly, we'll do the minimum necessary. I'll just say it like that. Request additional material if not challenged. I sort of chuckled thinking about her. And then lastly, you know, talking about, you know, standards for appropriate behavior. I think that speaks a lot to you, especially if you look at the recent TikTok challenge that's been out the past couple of weeks or so, you know, just outlining all kinds of just vulgar behavior, shall we say, at best. But those are several points that spoke to me in the discussion thus far.
Yeah, and your point on requesting additional materials if not sufficiently challenged is a good point. So Zach, why don't you go ahead and share what the commercial side's doing, and then I'm coming to you, Dr. Buddy.
And I think from a commercial perspective, when we look at these standards, we have to ask ourselves, does our product is what we're doing allow students to do this effectively? And from my experience, my perspective and experience, we certainly know that, first of all, the technology has to provide multiple avenues You know, and I'll tell a little bit of a backstory. I grew up in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, and if you're familiar with that area, you can go a different route and get to the same place at 2 o'clock or 9 o'clock, depending on the traffic patterns of the day, right? And so to draw that picture in the online setting, we really try to make student advocacy and students be able to reach out to teachers to advocate for themselves and to explore resources and materials, not in just one way. So our UI has to allow them to message teachers in multiple areas. It has to allow them to speak their language and on their time. And so I'm going to hopefully show some of the ways that we do that. And on the, I believe it's the second standard, LeiLani, where, you know, are they ready? Do they need more materials? When a student heads into a quiz, there is a button where they can go and explore more. We have extra learning objects in our system. So that it's not just once you get to the quiz, you have to take the assignment. At this point, a student can decide for themselves that, yes, I actually have to learn more. And they're going to be kicked back to more learning objects and more experience in that in our digital resources. If they go to the assignment, they're still not ready, they can click learn more again. It's going to take them to an extension page where it's going to give them additional materials where they can extend their knowledge and learn and push themselves a little further. And not only that, our instructional staff, they're all trained on that growth mindset language. I think somebody you know, put it, Jim, where these are behaviors that need to be learned and taught. So communication is so important from our instructional staff. You know, students need to know that they can do these things. They need to be communicated and trained on those things. And we have certainly courses that train them on how to leverage our system and leverage our resources to do that. And then, you know, not only that, our teachers will create resource pages and guides for our students to go where they can navigate at any hour of the day to get the extra help that they need or extra workbooks that they need. And I just want to show you one quick, you know, extra practice worksheets if they want to keep practicing, if they need those extra things. So we have all this infrastructure built. And I think it's incredibly important to have that structure and infrastructure built for students to be able to advocate for themselves and explore.
Okay, good. Thanks for sharing. And I just want to comment, I'll take the screen back. I don't find that a lot of schools, and I think we have some really high flyers on on the webinar today, but I just thinking across all the schools we've talked to so far this year as Learning Council, I don't think most of them have the plans pre-built or the branching off into reteachables or relearnables, additional materials kind of stuff that so many districts, I would say 50% of the market was flying by the seat of their pants, just getting anything up an hour before the next lesson. So I'm going to go to Dr. Buddy. What is your comments on all of this? We've been talking about students' responsibility.
And definitely want to say first, Zach, I love the option where kids are able to learn more, dive deeper into, you know, whatever topic they're on. So I mean, I think that's a really good option for teachers, definitely, as we're, you know, pushing teachers to continue to differentiate what they're doing. And, you know, we have some scholars that thrived, you know, during virtual learning. And, you know, now the kids are back in school. I think it gives teachers that option where they're able to kind of, you know, provide that extension activity and give the kids to, just like I said, dig deeper into it and learn more on that topic. So I think that's great, Zach. Definitely kind of wanted to say that first. Also, I think for us, you know, really kind of to stay on that same wavelength, I think it's important for, you know, students to definitely be able to take responsibility and be able to be held accountable, LeiLani, with, you know, what they're learning, you know, so, you know, whatever standard for that week the teacher is providing, that they are able to have multiple opportunities to practice, and just really give them that space where, you know, where kids can't struggle, but not at the level where they're totally frustrated and shut down.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all about the quality of the UI UX and that kind of thing. But that, I have to say, this is a huge shift. I mean, we were,
Yes.
you know, I'm going to call on Wendy now to talk about what a huge shift this really is. Go ahead, Wendy.
I made a note. I agree with what everybody has said. And one thing that I keep reflecting on is, as a former administrator, anytime I would meet with a parent, I would say, you should be the advocate for your child. If you're not, who will be? And I heard somebody say the other day, and it's interesting to me, and I think it's part of the shift from the pandemic. They said students need to learn to be advocates for themselves. And I agree. And I think that's addressed in these standards. And I keep reflecting too on John Hattie's research about student agency, and we're seeing what makes students more successful as they transition into career and into college. And those students that are responsible and they can advocate for themselves, those are the students that are more successful. And that's why I think it's so critical to have these standards. And I have to join the rest of the panel and reflect on my own elementary age child doing online learning for a year. And the one thing I will say is, and we talk about the students taking responsibility, and I'm looking at numbers 2 and 3. And I think we have to remember that there are perfectionists. I know we giggle about the ones who aren't perfectionists, but I have one that's a perfectionist. And the one thing we have to remember is some of those children online will do too much, and you have to put up some boundaries there. And that's where I think the personalized component of online learning and that rapport with the teacher is so critical.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to do another round here and go into the next set of standards. Thank you, Wendy. So let's look at standards number 4 and 5 and 6. Let's clump those together. Expects even access and equity. This is another big cultural shift, right? Masters methods of proof of work. We could have discussions about what is your proof of work now in the live environment and the digital environment, because they're very different. And then keeps themselves organized. 3 big giant topics. So I'm going to have Jim tackle it first.
So I love the fact we're on the theme of
okay.
talking to our children.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Jim Fazzino. Sorry. Yeah.
So thinking through student voice, agency, advocacy, I think assessment and the conversations around assessment in the landscape will need to shift because of the digital transition as well as the past year and a half of learning, right? Oftentimes, and I think this is in your EduJedi model, LeiLani, when we look at that, assessment really is designed to tell us what the student knows and is able to do. And that assessment may look different based on lived experiences of a child. And I know I'm jumping down to 8 a little bit, and 8 reminds me of a growth-centric mindset where you're really after growth, right? And so we're taking away the comparative of who's starting in first place and still ending in first place. And we're looking towards, hey, this is where I am, this is what I need, or this is what I can do now, and celebrating that, working from points of strength. I think that's really important, especially now as I'm hearing from colleagues in school buildings, the unique challenges of working with students with varying degrees of competency, where present levels of performance really, for lack of a better phrase, are a little bit all over the map. And so I think that if we can embrace that, and I look at that specifically in number 4, and then of course in number 5, you really do break into significant personalization for each member of a class, regardless if it's K or 12 or anywhere in between.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up number 8 too, because we're living in an environment now where technology essentially could remediate and individualize at scale we've never seen, like 3 grades, 4 grade width, right? And one of the things we've been doing for 250 years is we've been allowing kids to compare themselves with each other to the detriment of the ones failing in one over another. Maybe their math brain didn't turn on at the same time everybody else's math brain turned on, and they're permanently scarred by that for life. And that's huge in terms of inculcating our children to have a responsibility, not compare themselves. That is huge. So thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to go next to Matt. Matt, go ahead.
Oh, it's interesting hearing folks talk and so forth. Just the the whole issue that I brought back, like with parents, parent awareness, and so forth, and having them be engaged along with their child and so forth. I'm going through. I'm reading the standards that you've got put up right here, and just in discovery learning, using bookmarking for ease of access, accumulating reliable resource are important for any course of study. Just having the resources and materials is really important, obviously. And I also like I think it's interesting. Someone already brought it up with the maintains a clean device, any attachments and so forth, and just that whole piece of just educating students. Students think they know what they're doing, but they don't necessarily know what they're doing. And it's always interesting conversation that you have, with students and parents when they're getting going and they're working in any course. Some things that we, I guess, as what students perceive as being universal human knowledge and working their technology does not necessarily align with what we perceive as universal human knowledge in terms of in the educational world. Even, gosh, I guess I suggested, to a student really close to me, just download it as a PDF. What? What? How do I do that? And that's just something that's just universal, and trying to explain to them, things like, just tools like that are, they're totally, that's agnostic and the best way to go. Am I answering the question, LeiLani, or am I just kind of talking?
So I'm making a note myself because I think we do need to put another standard in here. Two actually new standards that you mentioned. One is downloading, right? How to do that. How to screenshot is another one.
Yes.
And what are the file forms?
Well, that's a true. That really is true, because you'll get students in classes that I personally teach. They'll upload it's not, to them, it's not a random file format. A lot of times it's the difference between Apple versus Windows and so forth. And sometimes students will want like your iPhone now that captures it in the HEIC format, and that's not necessarily readable to a certain one LMS or another, or whatever you're reviewing in.
Yeah, but there's free converters online. We use them all the time.
Yeah, you got to explain that to kiddos.
Yeah, I know. So these are their skills, right? So we should put those in there. Awesome.
Yeah.
Good comment. Okay. So I'm coming over to James. We've kind of skipped forward and around in here. What is your comment?
It's funny because my mind is racing, LeiLani, I have to tell you, and particularly I identify with number 6 because, frankly, guilty as charged. I don't do that. Okay. Number 6, with organized and organized digital folders, my desktop is a little less than organized. Okay. So what's interesting to me, here's what speaks out to me. We are, for a long time, unbeknownst to some educators that I've met over time, people do not realize that this whole thing is market based. People think they can get a quality education from somewhere else if you don't meet their expectations. So number 4 expects ease of access. So if you're an entity that provides education to the public, and it's this convoluted, contorted thing where you have to access the classes, and you have to have this device, it only works on this browser, people will go somewhere else, period. It's just that simple. So I think it's incumbent upon us as providers to really take these standards to heart also. And in order to, again, I go back to, I'm always cognizant of when I talk to the tech folks in our district who work really hard. And we were in a meeting once, and one of them said, James, what do you want? When it's all said and done, what do you want? And my response was, I want this. And I went to the light switch, I turned it off, then I turned it back on again. The point is, I'm not thinking about whether it's going to work. I turn it on, it just works, and I can focus on what I need to do, which goes back to number 4, expects ease of use. And more as parents and kids get more sophisticated and understand that, okay, there's a lot of options for me. Education looks all kinds of ways, K through 12 in the year 2021. So if you can't help me out, if you can't help me get from point A to point B, I'm going somewhere else where they understand the importance of number 4, 5, and all of these standards so that I can concentrate on what I need to learn.
Amen. I really get that. Well, thank you for that comment. That was awesome. Okay, so I don't want to prejudice where your comment's going to go, but I'm going to come back to you, Dr. Buddy. And then Zach, I think maybe I need you to show me something else too. Go ahead, Dr. Buddy.
I'm on mute. I think what just mentioned about the ease of use, ease of access, that's been one of our biggest issues now with so many different programs that teachers are trying to infuse on top of a new learning management system. So I mean, one of the professional developments we've just provided for teachers once again is, we use Clever, so it's a one single sign off for scholars. So we've been pushing them to connect. There's a process in place to connect those apps into Clever so that students are not having to keep, multiple logins and passwords. I mean, that's a big ask for a second grader, a first grader, even an 8th grader, here in this building, to have to remember all these different passwords. I know us as an adults have issues sometimes remembering all these different passwords we have to use. So for us, like I said, definitely the ease of access, and really making sure we have equity has been a big lift for us. And like I said, for us, I know one way we've kind of gone around that and helped our scholars has been using, Clever with the single sign-on.
Because navigation is everything.
Correct.
There's many stories during the pandemic where people they were lost in the ether. We don't know where that student went digitally, but they're over there, So that happened a lot. Okay, so Zach, I think ease of access and equity in and being non-inhibited. Show us what you guys are doing in the commercial side.
Can I have the ability to share, Doug?
Go ahead, Doug. I think I stop sharing and you can share.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just going to preface this with, I heard a lot of really great things. And I do want to say, that one of the neatest things that we do from a professional development standpoint with our teachers is we do a lot of training around growth mindset and giving students the ability to lower their stress, right? And how do you lower stress? It's by giving them a little bit of control, right? So our teachers are all well versed in being able to adapt. And I think it was Jim that was talking about assessments needing to change and be personalized. We give our students the voice and choice to ask to have assessments changed and adapted to what they need or what their interests are. And what I'm showing right now, this is a free training course that all of our students have access to. And you can see some of the topics. They learn how to navigate our system, how to message teachers, how to, what does a successful student look like, right? They get that idea of, and I think somebody mentioned this before, that it's a learned behavior. They're not just going to wake up and be self-motivated or wake up and know how to clean their desktop or know how to do these things. And so it's something that we take it upon ourselves to try to communicate as much as possible. Our teachers will send out newsletters with tips and things like that. We're well aware that that communication needs to be, happening between teachers, students, and not only that, but even in our training courses. Students learn how to upload, download documents. They understand what the lesson structures are. They get online etiquette. So things I think we mentioned, not this isn't verbatim, but rubbing it in the face that I completed this assignment and you didn't. They learn that that's not the right way to go about doing things. And now, as far as ease of access and equity is concerned, I really want to show this course structure. This is a project-based lesson here and project here, and we lay it out in such a way that that students can not only advocate for themselves every step of the way. So first of all, if they don't want to go to college, we invite them to say that. We make it a point to say, if you're not interested in college, then give us the ROI on not going to college. What do you want to do? And we allow them to explore that. We adapt those assignments. And then not only that, we support them through it. And so our teachers have, you can see how they will build gradually every step of the way of this project to finally come up with their final project. And so every step of the way, they're able to advocate for themselves. They're able to intersect. The teachers are able to push them, resource them, whatever they need. And so it's not just a, here's your project plan and go. It is a kind of rolled out
Scaffolded and staged. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the biggest things I just want to show real quick, I promise this is going to be fast. This is one of my favorite parts of this assignment, is that the students that also get to fill out their own rubric and give themselves feedback, which I think is a huge thing that we do in this project that allows them to kind of self-assess and adjust where they need to.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, so this is the commercial grade side, which is, you know, it's a little more seamless. I'm going to take back the screen now. But essentially, the difference in the navigational effort is significant, I think, is why I wanted you to show that, because you need more student agency. If you're having kids, you know, back out of the LMS, now go over into BrainPop, now back out of the, you know, that, now go over here, now go into the messaging, right? That's a lot. And managing the attention units of those students amongst the, you know, the average of several thousand systems a school district runs is a lot for teachers. It's a lot of digital traffic. So anyway, so that was a really good point that we went into. So I think we have enough time for one more round of conversation here. So I haven't been showing you the rest of the standards. So I'm going to pop those up on the screen. We already talked about bookmarking. There's really only 20 of them. That's enough. Like, that's a lot. We already said we're going to add a few other ones in here. Yeah. So I think I just want to kind of go back around with each of our education speakers and Wendy and say, you know, what else? Are we missing anything here? Because we're going into edit with the new EduJedi reference that will come out in December. And we want to make sure we're not missing anything serious here.
Well, I'm going to backtrack on.
Oh, here, I wasn't screen sharing. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, and there's one thing, LeiLani, that's driving me crazy about number 4. And I just want to see if the rest of the panel, if maybe I'm just off my rocker here, but when I look at the verbs that all these standards start with, number 4 isn't parallel in that the students are taking action on all of the other ones, but on number 4, the student expects as opposed to the student taking action. And I don't know if that needs to be revised or if it's just me. Do you see what I mean there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it does say and alerts, so that's an action.
Yeah.
Okay. But we could put how about we just do alerts takes action?
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So the other thing that I wanted to say that so Matt brought up a great point about parents and parental awareness, and this is going to sound like a shameless plug here, but as I look at these, the first book that I wrote was for parents, and it's because I don't think collectively as a group, those of us who've been in this for a while, which is pretty much everybody on this panel, but I'll take the blame here. I have not done a good job educating parents on what is all this online stuff and this digital and how do they help their kids. And I really don't think collectively we have done that as we've made this transition. And I think we need to do that better so that our learners can take advantage of these standards. And I'm not the best example because like James said, if you looked at my desktop, listen, every IT person that sees my desktop starts having heart palpitations, okay? But I think about it, you know, middle school kids can't organize their notebooks. And if their parents don't know how to help them organize their desktops, how are we, as providers or as educators, how are we training students to organize their files, for example? And so I think we need to collectively take ownership in that and make sure that, you know, it's not even digital literacy, but to make sure that we're providing the resources so that the students are actively engaged in learning. How do they maintain a clean device and attachments, right? How do they learn how to select appropriate avatars? You know, it's not just an orientation course at the beginning of their 9th grade year, or, right? It's not just one little quick course. It's how are they constantly being reminded of these best practices?
Yeah, and you
So
reminded me of something too. Actively backs up files.
yeah, absolutely. But it's not just a course, right? How are we doing this as culturally in online learning or digital learning?
Okay, excellent. And Matt, I'm putting your I'm going to just draft it in here. Knows how to download, knows file formats, screenshotting, fill forms, knows how to video skip, converting files like HVAC. Okay, so that's just a draft comment, so we'll rewrite that. Okay, coming back around to you guys, Jim, your final comments then on all of this.
Awesome. my awesome. I will say, you know, committing these through the lens of a student and the student's responsibility then allows educators to hone in on these very specific skills that children need to have. So in thinking through Wendy's comment, maybe it's for number 4, navigates a range of digital resources, right? Because it's a transferable skill. Okay, I could be in math class and engaging in one piece of digital content, and then if there's a specific navigation flow that I'm used to, I can then translate that to social studies or art or even a musical experience, right? I think if students need to model or demonstrate their learning experiences, such as maintaining a schedule, adhering to workflows, digital expectations, and productivity to others. So if you are looking for a student to really realize each of these outcomes, he or she should be able to serve as an exemplar to a colleague, almost as a little peer mentor to those coming into this experience. And I think that each of these standards does that, right? You're looking for very specific behaviors that are absolutely critical for the success of a student, and the ownership is on the student. And I do agree, I appreciate, Zach, you bring up the point about the resources that you provide for students and making sure they can access things whenever they need to, 24/7. To Wendy's point, for parents, the same thing could be true. We need to do a great job of making sure parents understand what the end user experience is like for their children, because before we started this conversation, education has changed dramatically. However, the perception of education for our parents still is what it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s. You know, their versions of school, policy development, funding streams are all based on our lived experiences as adults. So I make decisions for children in a very foreign and different world than what I experienced, right? And that's just the reality. So as much as we can put it on the student ownership and build those skills as part of our instructional programming, I think we're going to see great gains over the years as children continue to engage in digitally rich environments. So awesome.
Oh, excellent. Very well said. Okay, coming to James next, and then Matt, and back to Dr. Buddy. Go ahead, James. Final comments. You're on mute.
You would think I would be able to get this mute unmute thing straight by now, but you know, I don't know. I totally agree with what Jim said. Perfectly stated. I think that you could actually write a book from each one of these. I mean, this is very. I'm seeing this as sort of like a tabletop strategic analysis, you know, at the highest level of senior leadership to go through each of these and really craft a digital strategy moving forward for an entire school district. And my apologies, I have to jump to another meeting, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. But that's all I have to add. So
Thank you.
thank you so much,
much,
everybody.
Okay, bye, James. Okay, Matt, your final comments.
Okay.
My only final comment I've written down, one word, I think it was in standard 4 when he was talking, and this is a whole topic in of itself, equity. You know, to quote a former colleague of mine, it's bigger than a bread box, to get into what that means in all this. That is the single biggest, that's my last comment that I have, other than, really appreciate you, LeiLani, and all the good work that you all do. I think y'all are great, provide a great service. That's my shameless plug and praise to you all in your organization.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Buddy, what are your final comments on all of this?
Really don't have much more to add on that. I mean, these standards are great. I mean, it definitely provides the framework that I think all schools and districts need right now, especially in the space that I think everyone is in. So it definitely just, personally gives me, different things that I need to go back and make sure we have in place here. But I mean, this is just a great framework, LeiLani. Really praise you and your entire team for the hard work that you guys are doing to provide this necessary resource at this time. Because like I said, I think we're all in the same space right now, and this really gives us a great framework for all of us to use. So really just want to thank you again for that.
Well, thank you. Okay, so then I'm gonna call on Wendy and Zach to take that course you just showed, Zach, and expand it beyond the Edison Learning domain and offer it with all of these standards as if any domain plus your domain. Could you do that? It's just like an idea for you guys, because being able to learn all of these too in one place would be awesome. Yeah, so Wendy, your final comments.
I think that's great feedback, LeiLani. And again, I would reiterate what I said when I opened. One thing that attracts me so much to the work of the EduJedi is that you have the learning standards, or standards for learners. I think it's great to put that responsibility on the student, as we know that is what makes the student so successful. I'm so excited. And on a side note, I'm going to say this was one of the greatest hours that I have spent as far as my own professional development. So thank you to the panel, and thank you, LeiLani, for allowing Zach and I to participate today. It's been great.
Yeah. Okay, Zach, you're the final one. Go ahead.
It's been a great conversation. Being in virtual education, from being a teacher to now an administrator, and for the past 9 years, I have learned so much about students and educators. And I'm going to take this moment to a round of applause to my instructional staff, who is just amazing at teaching these things, providing newsletters to students and videos to help them understand what it means to be an advocate, and giving them the tools to do it. Students aren't going to wake up and just know this off the top of their head. We have to provide them with the infrastructure, the UI that's easy to navigate, that has buttons there that's clear as day, so they can say, oh, what's this? And they can explore and be captured and motivated by learning. And so it's just been a great conversation. I respect and appreciate every single one of you, and value the work that you're doing out there.
Well, great. Well, if anyone on the panel has other ideas about these learner standards, please email them to us. I know you guys all know how to reach us. We're going to continue editing in here, cleaning up the language, see if we're duplicating ourselves, right? And I'll put it through some of the core EduJedi, like Chris, who's our VP EduJedi, and have him really clean this all up before we reissue. But thank you for the feedback. Thank you for continuing to be great out there in your own school districts right now. Like I said, miss you, Jim. Wish I, could be out there physically. Dr. Buddy, you're a fabulous EduJedi too. And Matt, missed you when we came to Atlanta, but I hope to see you next time we come. But I'm going to let everyone go. I'm going to go back to our slide deck here real quick so we can preface the next major thing that we'll be doing. Let me see. Make sure I click in the right place. So again, thanks everyone. And our next activity is these same standards, different panel, and the focus will be on being device tidy and respectful. New set of standard discussion. So again, thanks everyone for being with us. I'm going to release you back into the wild, and hope to see you again soon. Thanks everyone. Goodbye for now.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye.